Welcome to Breaking News to Trading Moves. You know, we spend a lot of time analyzing the mechanics of trading, treating it like it's some form of, well, structural engineering.
Right, like building a bridge or something?
Exactly. We want these clean lines, exact blueprints, and, math that tells us we are safe. We want to believe that if the formula says to buy here, put your stop loss there, and take your profit up there, the trade is somehow just invincible.
Yeah, because math gives us a sense of control. I mean, we crave that binary reality.
Totally.
A clean chart with perfect geometry makes us feel like we are, taming the chaos.
But then the opening bell rings.
And the chaos fights back.
It always does. And suddenly that pristine blueprint gets hit by hurricane winds, high-frequency algorithms, and, let's be real, our own raw panic. So today we are settling a very specific argument about what actually keeps you alive in this business.
We are looking at the friction between having a perfect, precise entry point versus maintaining strict, unyielding position sizing.
Right. Here's the real question we have to answer today. Does tight position sizing actually save you, or does it just give you a comfortable place to hide while you ignore the fact that you do not really have a statistical edge?
It is a crucial tension to examine, really, and it forces us to choose what truly builds longevity in the market. I know what you are thinking if you are listening right now. You are probably thinking, but I need good entries to make real money.
Sure, yeah.
And you are right, which is exactly why examining this tension matters so much.
Well, let me just make my stance clear right off the bat. Position sizing is the ultimate determinant of survival.
Okay, bold claim.
I stand by it. Not just because it protects your money, but because it actively controls your emotional state. I mean, your entry criteria only tell you where a trade starts.
Right.
Your position size dictates how much psychological damage that trade can actually inflict on you. An imperfect entry, combined with sensible sizing, allows you to stay in control.
But an imperfect entry is still a mistake.
Maybe. But by contrast, the obsession with perfect breakouts or, clean pullbacks is so often driven by this ego-driven desire to look smart, rather than a practical desire to just stay solvent.
Okay, yeah, I see the logic there, but I come at it from a completely different angle.
Let's hear it.
I will argue that without precise entries, proper sizing just means you are bleeding out slower.
Ouch. Slow bleed.
It's true. Sizing might keep the lights on for another day, sure, but entries are the actual foundation that let you build upward. Without an edge on your entries, you are literally just delaying the inevitable zero.
I mean, survival is the first step, though, right?
But if you are comfortable taking mediocre setups just because your risk is small, you are merely tolerating bad trading. You aren't actually improving.
Wait, I have to stop you there. Let us talk about what happens physically and mentally when you completely disregard sizing for the sake of the so-called perfect entry.
Okay, go ahead.
We need to look at the primary function of position sizing. It is not some mathematical trick. It is a psychological shield.
A shield against what exactly? Your own bad decisions?
Exactly that. Think about what happens when you take on an oversized position because you are just absolutely certain your entry is flawless. You click buy. Instantly, every single tick of that 5-minute candle feels like a personal attack.
Well, yeah, your pulse goes up.
You start sweating. You completely lose the ability to read objective price action because your brain is treating a totally normal market fluctuation as a physical threat.
Right, because the cognitive load is just too heavy. The financial risk is overriding the analytical process entirely.
Yes!
You end up trading your P&L statement instead of trading the actual chart in front of you.
Exactly, and let us walk through the exact cascading errors that follow that panic. Say you were sized too big, the trade goes against you by 10 pips.
Which is nothing.
Right? In a normal environment, 10 pips is just market noise. It's breathing. But because your sizing is way too big, that 10 pips equates to like a car payment. So what do?
You move your stop loss.
You move the stop to give the trade room to breathe, quote unquote. Then it drops further. Panic sets in, and you cut the loss right at the absolute bottom.
Naturally.
And then 10 minutes later, you are revenge trading on a completely random setup just to try and make the money back. Proper sizing is like the suspension on a car.
Oh, I like this analogy.
Without a shock absorber, a normal pothole feels like a devastating car crash. Your sizing lets you hit the inevitable potholes of a normal market day without snapping your axle. It absorbs the variance so your decision-making stays intact.
Okay, I hear you, but I'm sorry, I just don't buy that entirely.
Why not?
The suspension saves the car. Let me tell you why. The pothole analogy is great, but suspension only matters if the vehicle is pointed in the correct direction.
Oh, come on.
It's true. Entries give you something concrete to backtest, to refine, and to rely on for that direction. If you deprioritize entry precision because you feel cozy and protected by your small size, you are not really trading a system.
You're still managing risk.
You are just guessing with pennies, man.
But guessing with pennies leaves you with actual capital to trade again tomorrow. You survived the learning curve. You can't learn if you're broke.
Yeah, but surviving is not the same as thriving. Let us say you survive the week because your size is small. You look at your journal on Friday. What data do you actually have?
You have a record of keeping your losses small.
But if your entry criteria are loose, your data is completely compromised. The measurable data generated by strict, precise entries is literally the only thing that allows a trader to determine if their strategy possesses positive expectancy.
That implies a level of robotic perfection that human traders just don't have.
No, it implies science. How do you know if a moving average crossover actually works if you just enter randomly somewhere around the line? You don't. Your architecture is built on sand, regardless of how light the building is.
Look, I hear you on the data collection, I really do. But you are assuming the trader is a machine who can perfectly execute those entries every time.
Not perfectly, just consistently.
But this friction over measuring precision leads us straight into the realities of the small account. This is where mathematical reality and human psychology just violently collide.
Okay, yes, let us ground this in reality for someone trading a smaller account.
Let's do it.
Say, a $1,000 account. This actually exposes a fatal flaw in the sizing solves everything mentality.
How so?
If that trader follows the golden rule of risk management and risks 1% per trade, they are risking $10. Let us walk through their day.
$10 on the line, okay.
They wait all morning. They stare at the screens. They finally find a pristine grade A setup. They execute flawlessly. The market moves in their favor, and they hit their target. They make, maybe $15.
The phrase, standing in a hurricane for pennies, comes to mind.
Precisely. The mental effort required to execute that trade is massive, but the financial reward feels completely disproportionate to the stress.
It does feel unrewarding at first, yeah.
Utterly useless, to be blunt. And because that nominal return feels useless, traders are practically forced to rely on superior, pinpoint entries to grow the account.
Force is a strong word there.
It's true, though. If they do not have exact entries that yield high risk to reward ratios, like risking 10 to make 40, their accounts remain completely stagnant.
And stagnation leads to bad behavior.
Right. What happens when an account stagnates? Frustration. Week 1, they follow the plan. Week 2, they get bored. Week 3, that stagnation tempts them to abandon the math entirely.
So they blow the account?
Exactly. They start sizing based on hope rather than risk. They say, I need to make $50 today, so they bump their risk to 5%. The lack of entry precision creates the stagnation, and the stagnation destroys the sizing discipline.
That is a very compelling sequence of events, I'll give you that. Though I would frame the causality differently.
How so? The math is the math.
Sure, but sizing based on what one wants to make, which you correctly identify as the ultimate temptation for small accounts, is exactly what makes an account utterly fragile.
Fragility is built into small accounts, though.
But they exacerbate it. When a trader forces a trade to fit a desired monetary outcome, they completely disconnect from the reality of the market. Let us look at that trader who bumps their risk to 5% because they want to make $50.
Okay.
They are sizing based on pure hope. When the inevitable, completely normal market loss occurs, it does not just take their money, it erases weeks of hard-fought progress.
True.
Worse, the emotional damage leads directly to the rushed, impulsive decisions we talked about earlier.
But you cannot ignore this psychological friction of that unrewarding 1% gain. It is just human nature to want a reward for hard work.
I know.
If the reward isn't there, the discipline just fades away.
Look, I don't ignore the friction, I embrace it, accepting that seemingly unrewarding 1% gain is the exact mechanism that builds emotional durability.
By making them suffer boredom.
By building resilience, the discipline of taking the small gain, of respecting the sizing parameters, even when it feels agonizingly slow, is the forge where long-term consistency is created.
I guess.
It is like going to the gym and lifting light weights to perfect your form before you load up the barbell. You are building the neurological pathways of discipline.
That's a nice analogy, but
Let me finish this thought. You argue that small accounts must rely on superior entries to escape stagnation. I argue that attempting to force superior entries or larger sizes out of impatience is the exact trap the market sets to bankrupt the small trader.
that sounds noble. Really, it does. But it avoids the hard work of actual system refinement.
It's not avoiding it, it's pacing it.
If you are relying on small sizing to protect you from the pain of impatience, you are avoiding the reality that your system might just be completely weak. This brings us to a major philosophical divide here, attempting to predict the market versus controlling yourself.
Well, let us talk about how you actually implement that control at the desk, because it is not just philosophy, it is actionable.
All right, what's the action then?
Instead of obsessing over the perfect entry and asking, where is the absolute bottom, you redirect your attention to what you can actually manage.
Meaning your risk.
Yes, you ask practical questions before you click the mouse. How much can I lose if this trade fails? Is this position size small enough for me to follow my trading plan without sweating? Will I still think clearly if the price moves against me?
Right.
And most importantly, am I sizing this based on my mathematical risk or based on my hope to pay a bill?
I mean, those are good questions for self-regulation. I won't deny that.
They are vital. These metrics are far more useful than chasing the exact moment to press buy or sell. They pivot the trader's mental energy away from trying to predict the unpredictable chaos of the market and toward managing the only thing they can actually control, their own exposure.
So you just give up on predicting anything.
If you control your exposure, the need for a crystal ball completely disappears.
That is a strong argument for emotional regulation. I agree. But have you considered that you cannot evaluate your control without the baseline of prediction?
What do you mean?
Let me explain how this works in practice. Correct position sizing makes losses easier to accept.
Yes,
When a loss is planned and affordable, you are supposed to review it objectively, right?
exactly.
Which proves my point perfectly. The correct sizing creates the calmness required for that objectivity.
But what are you actually being objective about?
The trade.
But progress starts when you sit down at the end of the day and actually study your trades. You look at whether a setup was poor, whether the broader market environment changed, or whether your stop-loss placement made technical sense.
Right. You cannot evaluate a setup, and you certainly cannot evaluate your stop placement if your entry criteria are secondary,
Wait, why not?
because there is no constant variable. If you enter randomly or loosely just because your size is small, what data are you reviewing?
You review the risk management process.
Imagine the journal entry. Well, I lost $5 today. I don't really know why, because my entry was just a guess based on a feeling, but hey, at least I kept my size small.
Okay, that's an exaggeration.
Is it? That is not progress. That is just cheap entertainment. Entry precision is what generates the hard data required for objective review. Without precision, your journal is literally worthless.
I am just not convinced by that line of reasoning.
How can you not be? It's just the scientific method.
Because it assumes traders with strict, precise entries are actually reviewing their losses objectively.
Okay.
If the size is too large, the lesson gets entirely buried under emotional trauma.
Well, sure, if they overleverage.
Right. A trader could have the most precise entry criteria in the world. They could have a perfectly backtested setup, a beautiful chart, a flawless plan. But if they size too large and that trade fails, which it will, because probabilities dictate that even great setups fail, the emotional pain prevents them from learning anything at all.
The pain overrides the logic.
Exactly.
How do you review a trade when you are practically in tears over a blown account? You don't.
That's true.
You close the laptop, you walk away in disgust, and you learn absolutely nothing except that the market hurts. They don't look at the data, they look at their depleted account balance.
Right.
Sizing must come first. Sizing ensures you are calm enough to even open your trading journal at the end of the day. If you are blinded by ego and pain, your pristine data is completely useless.
I agree that oversized positions bury the lesson. A blown account teaches you nothing but regret. Absolutely.
Glad we agree on that?
But undersized loose entries mean there's no lesson to learn in the first place.
I think there's always a lesson.
No. Trading is an exercise in probability. Entries define your probability. Sizing simply defines your longevity while that probability actually plays out.
It keeps you at the table.
Let me use an analogy here. If you only focus on longevity without a defined edge, you are just extending your time at the blackjack table without knowing how to count cards.
That's a bit harsh.
It's mathematically true. You will still lose all your chips. It will take you 6 hours instead of 1.
But long-term trading is not a casino game if your architecture is built correctly. It is not about looking smart or, posting the perfect chart on social media or catching the exact bottom just to prove a point.
Obviously not.
It is about staying solvent, being consistent, and maintaining a stable emotional baseline day in and day out.
And I maintain that keeping a stable emotional baseline is literally impossible if you are constantly bleeding capital due to poor entries.
Even small amounts?
No matter how small the cuts are, death by 1,000 cuts still ends in death. You'll eventually snap, you'll increase your size to make up for the hundreds of tiny losses, and you'll blow the account anyway. Precision prevents the bleed.
Well, we have thoroughly mapped the boundaries of this framework today. To summarize our positions regarding the architecture of a surviving trader, I think we both agree on the foundational premise that prioritizing ego invariably leads to failure.
Without a doubt.
Trying to catch the absolute bottom or short the exact top just to look like a genius is a totally losing game.
Absolutely. The market does not care about your ego at all. And we also clearly converge on the reality that sizing based on hope or desired monetary outcomes rather than mathematical risk is a fatal error.
Yes, the cardinal sin.
It destroys accounts, particularly small ones, where the temptation to force returns is just the highest.
But where we continue to disagree is on the primary driver of forward progress. I maintain that the psychological safety net established by strict position sizing is the paramount factor. It preserves the trader's emotional capital, keeps them in the game, and allows for the objective execution of whatever system they are running.
And I hold that the measurable data generated by precise entries is the true engine of progress. Because without that statistical edge, without a real mathematical reason to be in the trade in the first place, even the best risk management strategies only prolong the inevitable failure of a flawed system.
Examining multiple perspectives on risk architecture like this is incredibly valuable. There is clearly much more to explore in the delicate balance between trying to predict market movements and learning to actually control our own psychological impulses.
It really is an ongoing puzzle.
It is not a settled science, but a continuous practice of structural engineering in a highly volatile environment.
The market will always test both your precision and your endurance. You need to know exactly where you stand on both fronts.
Exactly. So, as you review your own trading framework tomorrow morning, consider your foundation. Does your building stand because the blueprint was flawlessly drawn and perfectly executed, or does it survive because the materials were designed to flex and absorb the pressure of the storm?